10 songs, one life story. Sean Roberts shows how music sparks real connection, courage, and leadership through authenticity. Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Welcome to Rise to Lead. With me today is Sean Roberts from France. Welcome, Sean.
Hi, Regina. Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure to have you on. Sean Roberts is a global connector and digital health attaché with a passion for innovation at the crossroads of health, culture, and technology. He bridges worlds through storytelling and music as the creator and host of 10 Tracks, a podcast where guests share their lives, their memories, and moments through the lens of 10 songs, exploring the music and stories that connect us all across borders, cultures, and generations. And we definitely touched on some cultures while I was on your podcast, Sean. So I really loved that. Thanks for having me on there again, too.
Thank you. Um, it's been an interesting creation that came about. I've been kind of during the pandemic. I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I was listening to a lot of audiobooks, walking the dog, and just kind of trying to get some space. And one in particular was Desert Island Disc, which a lot of people are familiar with, where they actually interview a lot of famous people, and they talk about some songs and if they get cast away to an island. So it definitely was an inspiration for me because hearing some of these, these are artists, musicians, Nobel Peace Prize winners, they're quite authors. So they were quite already established people. Whereas my idea was really, like music itself. If I was at a dinner party, I really would like to get everyone to get together, and we kind of did this once, where you bring a record or not a physical record, but you have a song that you play and say why you picked this song. So everyone around the table would get to kind of talk about that song and why it meant something to them. It could, they may listen to that song once every 5 years, or it may be a song that's just stuck with them and it's got something. It could be a parent passing, it could be their wedding, it could be something special, childbirth. So it made me kind of come up with the idea of how come, like 10 songs, which is I guess a solid number. And how do we kind of talk to friends, talk to people who I know, people who I want to know. They don't have to be, ridiculously famous or have, done anything. But I think there's so many great stories that everybody has, and that music has been along the way with them through these stories and their journey. So I think music is an important piece in most people's life.
Absolutely, yeah. In that time of those lockdowns, they definitely destroyed a lot of businesses, but they also brought about new ideas, right? So I love that you came up with this idea because I personally super enjoyed it. Even just choosing the songs was a fun activity to me, and I had the excuse to really listen to music, which I hadn't done in 2 days, I think, although I always try to have music as part of my day. But sometimes we just have so many meetings or other activities that we forget about it. And that was a perfect excuse to bring music back into my life and to then also think about those moments and have those memories come up again on my mind and in my heart. So thank you for that opportunity. So yeah, and I'm also curious because this is a leadership and self-leadership, of course, because that's the biggest part of leadership, in my opinion, podcast. I'm also curious whether you have learned any leadership lessons through doing this podcast.
Absolutely. I think a lot of my, my other work and historical work for over 20 years, I've been a lot behind the scenes, so working with a lot of thought leaders, working with organizations, and and getting those people to be the front and center. But my role has always been a little bit in the background, which I was fine with because I was kind of this connector, this kind of, working as collaborator and building these partnerships. So to be front and center, to have to be the one to ask the questions and kind of go through, I think that my confidence was built with the music because I know music. Even if I don't know every type of music, which you threw me, I mean, that was a big masterclass for me to learn the choices that you picked in your songs because I'd not heard most of those. But it's still the fact that we're talking over the music. And I think that's when a way where I feel like we can come to a common meeting place. So I could be, you could be this senior lecturer or somebody who's an academic that has ridiculous amounts of knowledge in some subject, and I have no knowledge of this subject, but we kind of find a common ground with music. So I think it's a matter of, we're people, we both have similar feelings and emotions, and music can kind of stimulate that for both of us.
Yes, and it also helps us discover other cultures and discover other elements of other
Yeah.
cultures. So if somebody shares their music with us, if nobody had ever shared their music with me, then I may not have discovered it myself. Of course, now we have the internet and YouTube and whatnot. However, it's not always automatic because even the suggestions, they are tailored to us, right? We know that. I mean, they use our AI to read all our previous choices so that they can suggest similar choices most of the time. But when people start talking to us about their preferred music, then we can actually open up our horizon in that sense. Music tells us so much about other cultures. So I know, one thing that we definitely wanted to talk about today is self-belief. And you already mentioned a piece of it, which is confidence or a related concept. So what role does self-belief play in your creative decisions? And how do you strengthen it when the self-belief wavers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you really have to believe in yourself and what you are bringing across and what's important to you and your passion. And I think it's less about being the most knowledgeable person, in a specific or particular topic, but really knowing that you're coming there with the passion of wanting to learn more, wanting to um, work with the person your guest is to understand and to do that. So the belief is in yourself that, you coming as yourself and genuine will put the other person at ease and trust you into working with you. And it's also about building community.
Right. Absolutely. And then I think there's one more piece to it in this particular case because, your podcast idea or concept is quite unique because you want to still put it in a context of uh, uh, not just the personal stories, but also even the professional stories of people, whatever they want to talk about, right? And not everybody would dare do that. So I
No.
sometimes talk about dance in business presence and executive presence and leadership presence, or how it informs my own leadership and my communication. That is a little bit going in that direction as well, right? And these are concepts that are not always immediately embraced. So we gotta package them in a way that they make sense to people. So, what do you have to say about that?
I think that I'm honored that a lot of people have trusted me when they share their music and they share the stories behind the music because they have told me things that are very dear to them and quite some said I don't talk about this normally on podcasts or bring this up and I'm sharing this with you. It could be stuff about abuse. It could be stuff about their personal journeys, which are some of them have a very dark story and it's horrific, but at the same time they're coming through this and that's so inspiring, not just for me to learn about this and to have them trust me, but also I'm also a listener. If like any of my, guests or people who listen to the podcast, I'm learning about their story as well, and it does help me. I get something out of it, as well as hopefully the guest and the listeners can get something as well.
Absolutely, I can only echo that. I learn from every single guest. It's a moment of co-inspiration. So we come together to inspire others to share our wisdom, our knowledge, our insights, but also to learn from each other every single time, right? And I do remember also sharing a very personal story, at least one, if not
Yeah,
more, on your podcast. So that's definitely true. It opens the space for that.
yeah. And
And
I
it,
hope that's a place that we can provide that with trust, and that the guests and the listeners feel like they can relate. Because I think the people my guests are people that most people listening would relate to. It's not like somebody, oh, there are some astrophysicists that they obviously a lot of science in their world, and not somebody who's just struggling with some of the same things everyone else is struggling with.
yeah, right. So, so let's think a little bit more about the self-belief and the doubt that we all experience at certain moments in life, right? It both in leadership and just in life in general, doubt often creeps in. So, what's your go-to method? Do you have one to quiet that inner noise and to move forward decisively?
I mean, I think, doubt for me is definitely reaching out to someone, especially if you don't really know them. It's not a friend or somebody who you have a good relationship with, to say, hey, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? And then, one, they could reject you. Two, they just, blank you. So I think you have to have that belief that, you know what, everything's going to happen for a reason. And the people who come back, and there was meant to be. So I don't over think too much. It dings me occasionally when those say no. But at the same time, it's probably for a reason, and I have to trust that it works itself out. And so when I have had people who even I've been a little bit not sure about, and then they completely surprised me, and the interview went great. It was such a what I learned from them and what we talked about was incredible. So I sometimes have to not overthink it or overanalyze it, and just trust that these things tend to work themselves out, and that if I put more pressure on myself, it's not helping the situation. So I have to kind of just flow with the go, or go with the flow, in terms of knowing that I'm, lean into it and believe that it's meant the way it's going to be.
Right. Yes, and the same when, as we started this particular podcast, and I'm also posting the video. So we had a problem, a little tech problem with your computer crashing, and that's just part of it. It's part of
Yeah.
life. We always work with those situations. We don't allow ourselves to be yeah, distracted by those, right? We just move on. We do with what we can with what we have, so to speak. So absolutely. Um, so when I just wanted to come back to something that you said. Have you ever said no to anybody if they reached out to you?
Yes, I did have uh, one guy that reached out, and he's a musician. He wanted to just do 10 of his songs,
Hmm.
like all of his. And I just said, it's a great idea, but it really doesn't fit
Yeah,
with the concept, because I know you might have a bit of a story about how you wrote that song or what that song's about, but it felt more like plugging your songs rather than,
right.
really talking about stuff that inspired those songs. Because there's probably a song that inspired the song you created. So of course there might be one song that you want to add into your playlist of yourself, which I have no
Hmm.
qualms with as an artist. But I think that just doing a whole record or 10 of your personal tracks doesn't necessarily tell the story of how you got to those. So
Right.
I think they understood, and it was a hard decision to make, because I wanted to somewhat be pleasing to the potential guests, but at the same time, I wanted to stay true to what the podcast should be about. And I have friends that we would do a special episode on some specific artist or a specific, like we did the James Bond soundtracks from the original series, with Sean Connery all the way to now. So we were able to pick our 10 favorites. So that was a little bit different to the norm. So I think there's room to be a little bit expressive in the podcast as well.
Right, right. So I get that. So I have said no to people as well because, sometimes it's just not a great fit and they might be great at what they do and they would be awesome for other podcasts and I could even maybe suggest some other podcasts to them sometimes. But it's just not a fit for this one. And even here, we talk a lot about leadership on this podcast, but that also includes self-leadership, and there's a very, very important piece of it. So sometimes we just focus more on the self-leadership than on the leadership of others
Yeah.
because it is so key for any type of leadership. And that's totally fine with me. I just really want to keep it also within what I have defined. So I totally get it, Sean. I think it's just a good decision to make because if not, also guests will be really confused. I mean, not guests, the audience, the listeners would be really confused because they expect a certain type of content and then they don't get it,
Yeah.
right? So we don't really want to disappoint our audience either. So that's really important. Okay, so how do you personally, Sean, stay focused on what truly matters in this world right now that we live in, where distractions are everywhere, right? And how can you help others to do the same as a leader in whatever capacity you do that?
It is difficult, and I definitely confer with other people to talk to them about their, some areas they do. I try to do fitness. I try to do meditation. I'm in this kind of spiritual container with about maybe 16 people, and there's like a weekly call where we get together and do stuff. So it's been a big journey to me to stay focused. I think there's a lot of distractions. I think there's a lot of negative distractions with current situations, current events. Growing up in the States, but living in France, I see what's happening in the US currently. I try not to, try to make a point of not having too much politics on the podcast. I think if there's a song that has a political background, then of course we talk about it, but I try not to bring current events into the podcast. And that's been tricky with some guests who might, have a strong opinion of one or the other. Um, but I think my focus has been trying to keep a balance with everything, my personal life, my family life, my work life. And, I think previously I focused a lot on work in my previous role. So the music and the podcast here, I feel like it's more passion driven. So it helps me keep this balance and contain everything as much as I can.
Yeah, it's really important to keep up the harmony in one's life, right? And the joy, because that's the vibe we contribute to the overall consciousness. And and so I also try to keep politics out of my podcast. I agree with that because it's really divisive and it's not the point of my podcast. So there are
Yeah.
certain podcasts where that might be the point, and that's totally fine. Now, yes, it is sometimes hard to stay on that joyous vibe, and I'm not saying you should go through life smiling all day, but it does help to smile a bit more, and to just
Absolutely.
yeah, and to just contribute that. It's a contribution to the world, and it's a contribution to humanity. So let's not forget that fear rules the world right now.
Yeah.
And that's what we really do not want more of. So it's an extremely important leadership responsibility to not buy into this fear too much and to also not create more of it, right?
I think that's also where, when the pandemic was going on, there was also a lot of conflicts going on, that started around the same time in Europe and elsewhere. And my idea after listening to a lot of podcasts is where is there a safe space to just talk about not necessarily cotton candy and Skittles and beer, but something that is a little bit more substance, but that has a positive message to get across. And I remember thinking about this jacket that I have, and it's bizarre how I went from this jacket idea to the podcast with music, because music has been a big part of my life again since I was little, and learning about music and having music in there. But it went from this jacket saying, this jacket is iconic. It's been from people like James Dean to current. It's been like people in the UK, a punk jacket. It was a golf jacket. It was currently, and it's still something that people wear. Take the fashion side out of it out, but just that thing that was able to trans across different types of people. It didn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. It didn't matter what color you were. It was something that was just an iconic piece that people wore, and it didn't mean rebellion. It was just it's basically like a canvas jacket, like the one you saw James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, if you've seen that. So it's something similar to that. And I thought, this is so iconic. How can I create something like a podcast that can talk about this and bring people together to talk about the same euphoria that maybe you get out of seeing that jacket? And then it morphed into music and the 10 tracks, which I felt had a stronger kind of focus.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, even the word pandemic, I mean, they put this in our mouths, which I have never used personally because there has never been one in my lifetime. So, but it's a way to create fear. And it was all based on this fear creation, the whole news that was spread and everything that was globally at the same time, all programmed to create fear. And people bought it. And
Uh,
that's, we don't need more of that. So, also, what you said, I think, is yes, you could find also that, you could find a symbol like this jacket, right? That gives you like a hub of sorts where you can come to and say, okay, this represents something to me. So it could be a symbol, and it could be inside of you. It doesn't necessarily have to be outside of you. You could find that safe space inside of
mhm.
you, because that's really and truly, if we think about it, the only safe space we have.
Yeah.
It's not really a location where we are. So we could, I'm just going to use my own example. I mean, my dad was very adventurous, but how did he pass on? Well, in a traffic accident like 2 miles from home, right? And you never know. You never know. Um, so it's not so much about the location as about finding that inner peace for
Mhm.
ourselves, right?
There was on when we did my podcast, Regina, we were talking about something about empowerment, and you actually said something quite profound, and it really stuck with me because you do hear a lot of people, "Oh, I'm going to help empower you," and you basically said, "I can't empower anybody but myself."
Mhm.
And I felt that was so, and again, one of these moments where I'm sitting there as a listener too, and really felt that was so right, and so, and like it was great to hear you say that, but something that probably a lot of people aren't aware of. So I felt it was a great to share and how you put it.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. Yes, it's just because we need to remember that our power is already inside of us. Nobody
Yeah.
can place it inside of us. It's just a matter of us connecting with it, right? And with that piece that we also have available inside of us. And then actually that contributes to the external world peace. And we often forget about that. So, I'm curious, Sean, and this is a question that I have been waiting to ask you. Which of your 10 tracks best represents a turning point in your own life or leadership or self-leadership journey?
Uh, that's a great question. I actually, to be honest, haven't composed all of mine. I've started to explore them, and I have a few that I would probably pick for reasons that I feel like, from a music perspective, I'm doing. I think from a personal growth perspective, I think there's a few songs that I would say have always been something that stuck with me. And I think for me, growing up in this, I grew up in New Orleans, but I moved away at a very early age in like my early 20s and kind of moved to the UK and lived in Europe and back in the States and stuff. And kind of never really felt settled or home.
Mhm.
So, that's been part of my growth is trying to make sure that wherever I am, there's a part of me that is, this is where I'm meant to be right now. And it doesn't mean I'm going to be here forever, but less of that homesick feeling like, you don't feel rooted. And I think that was somewhere. So I'd have to really explore which song, but there's one song that I've really loved called "You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory," which was written originally by Johnny Thunders, and who was in the New York Dolls. This is from a like early '70s New York band, pre-punk, I guess they were kind of glam or pre-glam, pre-punk. And Johnny Thunders is no longer with us, sadly, but the song was covered by quite a few different artists over the years. But it's something that stuck with me because it's talking about not so much your life is over, but just things that you shouldn't just like, don't rely on one previous way or something. This is about moving on and continue to grow. And I think that's helped me always keep that in check to see that I gotta kind of keep going forward.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. As somebody who's also lived in different places, but also
Yeah,
has gone
you can
through.
relate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I never say again, I'm gonna stay here forever because I've said that I said that twice before and I won't say it again because I know it might not happen. So yeah. So what have you learned from your podcast guest that has influenced how you lead others or how you show up for others?
I really have learned a lot in regards to maybe my being judgmental in some ways, not necessarily like being a music snob or anything like that, but I think um, seeing some of the songs, I'm curious why they picked those songs and suggesting because it could be a band like somebody who I know or personally, and they might have picked a band that I love, and they picked the Strangers song that I would have been like, why'd you pick that song? So
Mhm.
I've had to kind of take that judgment side of me out and really understand that just to go with the story behind it. And once they've shared the story with me, once I learn a little bit about the song itself, maybe, and if it ties into them, it's been really incredible because it's it teaches me a lesson as well as what's being shared and the story behind that. And I think some guests have such a profound story that they relate to this song for, which I think some things I could relate to, some things I cannot. But I feel like when they share it, I've really enjoyed that journey they've taken me on with them.
Yes, absolutely. It's almost like reading a book. And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, totally. Now, yeah, that's interesting. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but are you ready to play with me a little bit?
sure.
Okay, let's see what this gives us. Okay, so if I know we want to talk about be self-belief and belief and focus and doubt and all that today. So if belief, focus, and doubt were tracks on an album, what could or would their titles be? And you can invent them.
Okay.
So belief,
Uh,
focus, and doubt.
belief. I would
Yeah.
say belief would be you could, I mean, using a title that's already there is Here Comes the Sun.
Okay.
And if come up with my own, I think it's something about, the sunshine. I think knowing that there's a new day that's going to happen and that whatever is going on today, tomorrow is there for something else. So I would look at that as inspiration to the belief that you have to know it's
I love
not
that.
not final every time.
Yeah, I love that. So that every day one can start new.
Yeah,
Yeah. And one has what it takes to do that. Everybody
right.
does in a way. Okay. Yeah. And then so the next one, focus.
Focus. That's a good one
That's a
because
tough one.
that's probably would be my biggest challenge is focus because I feel like being sitting and focusing, you do have to, but I think it's also about being present. So I think a song with um, present and now, here now, something to do with a title like that, I would say is, which is, I do feel a lot of people are lacking that, or they're not just really, and I struggle with that sometimes, and I think my wife puts me in check, and I have to sometimes rethink about that. Hey, I'm here. This is the moment, and this is special, and knowing like you and I on this call at this very moment is a piece of my life that I want to be present. I want to like give all because this is an experience that I'm doing. And so I think the focus for me is presence.
Yes, absolutely.
Might have to work on a better song title than presence, but I think that's where I'd go with
Yeah. Yeah, some title we can still work on, but
it.
so yeah, something like Presence Wins, or I don't know. I'm not like maybe the most creative about this. This is why I'm relying on you, right? So what about the word doubt?
Doubt is I think it's about looking, and you can still put a positive spin on this because
Mhm.
no matter how much you may, oh, this is not going to happen, or maybe this, and having this maybe inner doubt, it's again changing the mindset.
Mhm.
I believe that you have the power to not just consume the doubt in a way that is going to have a negative impact or that can will just take you down a negative path. And because then I think you're feeding the doubt.
Mhm.
So by accepting the doubt or knowing that that's a possibility that you should have in your mind, and then looking to see what's the alternative to that or what you could do to make release the doubt, I feel like that would be the song. Again, I'll have to come up with a better title for that, but I feel like it's got to be the release of the doubt.
Maybe someone's gonna make now these three songs, but then give us the titles.
Yes, that would be good.
Right. Yeah. Okay, but this is good. This is good. These were great contributions. If somebody feels inspired listening to us to make those songs with what Sean just offered to us in terms of those three words, then feel free to and reach out. Okay, so how do you define leading yourself well, and how has that evolved over time?
I feel like there was a quote by Mark Twain. I think it's Mark Twain where it says, "All you need in this life is ignorance and confidence, and success is sure." And although it was a little bit tongue in cheek the way he said it, I think that there is some truth to it in regards to, again, going back to not necessarily feeling like you have to be the smartest person in the room or the person, and it's not even about having the most confidence, but I feel like it's coming genuine, coming with a strong belief that I'm meeting you where I am and who I am, and to get that mutual respect, a mutual kind of connection.
Right, right. Yes. So that's super important because when we judge, we are really always, first of all, the harsher we judge others, that's usually an indicator that we judge ourselves really harshly too, right? And then we it's really hard to find common ground with somebody.
Mhm.
And we definitely also must remember that we usually come from a place of conclusions that are
Yeah,
not necessarily the truth, conclusions based on our beliefs, on our own experiences, on what we've picked up from other people around us over time and whatnot. So it's important to remember that sometimes when we listen, we only get a piece of the information, and it's often a good idea to ask additional questions before we react.
yeah. I think also talking to some people recently, I was in a conversation with this woman, and she had a lot of self-doubt. and worth. And that really made me sad because again, I kind of feel like there's so much that you have to be worthy of and so much that you have to be grateful for and that you should look at yourself. But having this like self-worth so low, it's really it's tough that people feel that. And maybe social media doesn't help the situation sometimes when they see people trying to present this life or present themselves in such a way that other people feel inferior, which is sad. But
Mhm. Well, we tend to forget that we don't need to deserve our worth, actually. We are already worthy because of who we are. One thing is to, to live ethically, but our self-worth actually is already intrinsically there. It just, we forget about it again. Just like we have that intrinsic power, we forget that the worth is already there. We're not here to deserve anything,
mhm,
spiritually speaking. It's already there. I mean, we already have that just by being here because we are a piece, so to speak, of consciousness. We all are. And we don't maybe capture the entire meaning of that in our human while in our human bodies. But that's how I see it, right? We're all a piece of this great consciousness. And and as such, we experience our world from our human body at this point. So what does that mean? Well, we have a certain function here, we have a certain role in other people's lives, and yes, we want to do our best to have a fulfilled life, to have a joyous life, because that's, I think, part of purpose actually,
mhm.
and to uh, yeah, and to do it in our own way, which is a big piece of it too, not in somebody else's way, right? That's why we're all different. So, but yeah, it's instilled in us from from a young age that we are not enough as who we are, that we somehow don't live up to other people's expectations, which then seem to be more important than our own expectations, and so on and so forth. So I think it's just really important to remember that you are already worthy automatically.
I think jobs and possible the pressures of work could put this extra added pressure on people though sometimes, which makes them feel they don't realize this worth that they have, like they should already, like you say. I think that's another area, and their families, and just society. So it's a shame because again, hearing this from people, it saddens me because I think I agree with what you're saying, and we have it inside of us, and it's a matter of believing.
Right. And you bring a certain value to your work, which is not the same as your self-worth, right?
Right.
So I think we also need to make that distinction. So what's the value you bring to your work, to your job, to your business, or whatever it is for you? And then a different thing is your inherent worth. And that's what we doubt. And it doesn't help us. It doesn't help us. But I think we all do it at some point
Yeah.
or to some extent,
True.
right? Because it's just part of the whole, uh, yeah, the whole system a little bit. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add just now, Sean?
No, I
No.
think you. I
Okay.
think you you just
Okay.
summed it
Okay.
up.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, yeah. So, what is one message that you would want every listener to take away about leading from authenticity and self-trust?
I think that believing in themselves and understanding that this, the strength that they sometimes you have to pull the strength. I don't know, necessarily every day that I wake up and I say, okay, I've got the strength to tackle everything, but I don't have the fear. I feel like I have the confidence to do it, and it probably brings me back to the curiosity to do it. to explore this new, what's going to happen today, what are these going to be, what's going to be the take, and not let some things, especially with other work, you can get frustrations if things don't always pan out the way you want it. So I would say the one thing is, um, just digging for that inner strength that's already there.
Right. I love this. And one thing that has helped me in that sense of what you just said, Sean, like, not everybody, not every day is the same. Sometimes we feel like we have more energy, higher energy levels, sometimes lower energy levels, sometimes we're tired. That's all normal. But one phrase that has really helped me, and I picked that up from a methodology called access consciousness. I've studied a lot of that stuff in the past. So, and it goes like this. It goes like, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And that
Mm,
means that every single situation, all of life, I will take with ease as far as possible. It's like a statement, right? It's a little bit like an affirmation, to remind myself that if I'm experiencing this situation, that means that I can actually deal with it, that I can live up to it, and so it's not just the desired experiences that are received with this ease and joy and glory, as they say in this particular statement, but also any type of experience. And another way of thinking about this, in my opinion, is to sometimes objectify experiences. And, we talk so much about adversity, Sean, but if you actually look at it as just an experience, you take some of the
mhm.
weight away already, right? So yeah, I think a lot about these things, as you can tell, probably.
I think that's a great point, is that everything that you're going through is just an experience, right?
Mhm.
And I think that helps if people would be mindful of that, or can, make keep that in mind, then they would realize that this will pass,
Mhm.
good or bad, that they're going through.
Yeah, and then it's really, there's always something in it for me. So
Hmm.
what's in it for me, right? Or how is this for me? That's actually the better question. How is this for me? Because there's always something for me in any experience. We always say we create our reality? Well, that's what it's about.
Yeah,
We
I
create
agree
it
with
for
that.
a reason, whether we are aware of that reason or not, right? Okay, well, yeah, I love this conversation, Sean. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you would absolutely want to share, apart from where people can find you? We'll talk about that in a bit.
No, I think that, um, the creating the podcast was really about connecting with people, and building this community, and having music as the platform to do that. And I feel like it's been a way to bring people together and to share. And by doing the sharing, it helps them. I think they get a release, and they can move on from this. And I feel like the people listening also get a chance to connect with, feelings that they may also have. So I want to continue that journey, myself, and to how to explore that, but with the passion of music as our, as the partner to do it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. And where can people find your podcast?
So the podcast is on most of the streaming platforms like Apple, Spotify, I think Amazon, and a few of the other main ones that are, there. It's also on YouTube, so there's a video cast.
Mhm.
And then I've recently worked out a deal with a friend who's going to stream the podcast once a month, once a week. It has a slot to host it on a FM indie radio station, which is more of a appointment radio. So it's a streaming radio, and that has a slot. It has like a morning slot on the West Coast time, and it's around 5 p.m. UK time. So that's going to be interesting. Interesting to have this on the independent FM radio station to have that's with the music as well. So that's a different dynamic than just having the audio and the conversations around the music on the podcast.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, the name of the podcast is 10 Tracks. So check it out. Thank you so much, Sean, for coming on and inspiring with me here today.
Thank you, Regina. It's been great. It's great to see you again. And I'll share with you around the 22nd of December, your episode will be airing. So maybe when your guests hear this, but I look forward to communicating that with you.
Yes, it seems like yours is going to be out first. So that's a great thing to
We can plug
mention.
that.
Thank you. Yes, so 10 Tracks is Sean's podcast. Thanks to everyone listening, and tune in again next time.
Thank you.
If something in your leadership feels off, or you're ready to lead with more ease and authenticity, let's talk. In a free 60-minute Lead and Thrive session, we'll cut through the noise, get honest about what's really going on, and map out your next bold move. No cookie cutter, no surface level, just real clarity and the freedom to lead as you. Spots are limited. Go to transformyourperformance.com/Lead Thrive session to grab yours. Lead like you mean it.